Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions, your weekly dose of what's brewing in the commodity space. I'm Manisha Gupta. Well, we are really watching out at the skies right now where the monsoons really haven't been so well for the month of July, and August actually has been quite dismal. 6% below normal monsoon is what we are staring at from 1st of June to 23rd of August. India's monsoon has recorded erratic distribution geographically. While there have been floods in some areas, the others are left to cope with a near drought. There is less than normal rainfall in states like Maharashtra, Kerala, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. While at the time of sowing in June, the rainfall was good, but the following showers actually have gone missing. And this can impact the yields of important crops like rice, cotton, pulses and oilseeds. So while we are looking at deficient rainfall in some places, it has been floods in other states and cities like Assam, Bihar, etc. To talk more about the crop and of course on what's happening on the agriculture front, we are now joined by Ashok Gulati, who's Chair Professor Agriculture, ICRIER, and we are also joined by Dr. Ramesh Chand from Niti Aayog. Dr. Gulati, let me start with you first. And what is your sense? I mean, the monsoon vagaries, the uncertainties are still on. What is your sense? What are the kind of crop expectations can we see? And even as the crop numbers are on the higher side, would you say that it is the productivity and the yield which might get impacted?
Sure. I think there is a patch where for 15 days or even almost for 3 weeks it hasn't rained very well. And there is a stress to the crops in those pockets. Other pockets where there is a flood, again there is a problem. So this is going to somewhat temper the expectations of a big bumper crop. Unfortunately, but overall I would still be positive that it will be a reasonably good crop.
Dr. Chand, getting you in the conversation and getting your view on the same as well. How do you look at the crop situation? And higher sowing number, of course, is positive. But would you also say that at this point in time, there's nothing to worry about?
No, I think the picture is by and large clear, and in a large country like India, it never happens that progress of monsoon or behavior of monsoon will be uniform. Every year we used to have drought somewhere, flood somewhere, so that is common situation for a large country like India. But I find that this time, though we have floods in some area, but you will find that the severity of flood is not as serious as it used to be when you get this kind of rainfall. Also, if we look at the progress of rainfall till yesterday, I think it is within the normal range. We have only 5 to 6% overall deficit, and there is a possibility that this can even be covered up. But I would say that the ultimate indicator is available from the advanced area information, which shows that overall area under different crops, reported crops, is nearly 3% higher than what is the normal area.
All right, so as of now, no concerns really when it comes to the crop being sown. But Dr. Gulati, this one is to you. The domestic inflation has been receding, which of course is a positive news for many stakeholders. But the food prices coming down isn't so great for the farmers, especially as the real debt for them is on a rise.
The prices fell because of 2-3 factors. First, over the last 3 years, I think, in a sense, there has been a great success of the Modi government that they have been able to bring down the food inflation. I feel there are 2 major factors behind that. One was that the global prices were coming down, which ultimately impacted our domestic prices too. And within the system, the supply of money, M3, which was growing at 18%, today is growing at 7% only. So both factors from the supply side of money and the overall global supplies of agricultural commodities tempering the food prices in India. But now it seems it has hit the rock bottom. Prices were so low in India that many commodities, they could not recover even the costs because of the bumper harvest of 16-17. farmers have lost in certain pockets from the price front, despite a big crop. And given all this, and now that has triggered a wave of loan waivers, I'm not sure whether the prices in agriculture can remain that low for another 2 years, 3 years. There would be some improvement in prices as far as my reading goes.
Dr. Chand, even as the food prices are on the lower side, and as Dr. Gulati pointed out on, we perhaps are looking at rock bottom prices here. There have been concerns on the back of higher debt, lower food prices, that the whole idea about doubling the farm income by 2022 perhaps may not be achieved. You have come out with a 7 agenda paper here. What is your sense on when will we take that effect materializing?
This year, the kind of growth we have, I think that fits into the roadmap which we have prepared for doubling farmer income. You might have seen that the 4th advance estimate of crop production have been released few days back. They are much higher than what were the 3rd advance estimates. And when these figures are accounted for, you will find that the growth rate of value added or growth rate of GDP agriculture will cross 5%. And in the doubling farmer income model, we just envisage that the growth rate in output of agriculture, crop, livestock, fishery and forestry should be somewhere around 5.5%. And I find that when these 4th advance estimates are factored in, you will find that on growth side, the things are moving as it is projected in the roadmap.
So even as we are looking at positive cues when it comes to the food prices, it is ahead of the festivals that we usually see the prices rise. So even as the food prices have been declining for last many weeks, this week actually, starting right from pulses to edible oil to sugar, Dr. Gulati, almost everything seems on a rise. Would you call it very seasonal, cyclical, and thus a very one-off in that sense?
Definitely in October, November, the peaking of these prices normally takes place because of the festive season. That's what we will expect, but that's more a seasonality. I'm talking about the structural changes in the policy front also. Farmers having suffered, the government will also have to raise MSPs somewhat more liberally than has been the case in the previous years. And if you don't get the farmers right in terms of prices, then its manifestations can come from distress and atonement in terms of loan waivers. So I think getting the markets right should be a first priority of the government. And for that, you have to, abolish all export controls for the farmers, abolish stocking limits on the private trade to hold stocks, abolish all bans on futures, so that markets start functioning in a true sense.
Dr. Gulati, it is much about the structural changes, as you pointed out, and we have seen that happen too. How would you look at MSP, subsidies, etc., all of that impacting? This is not structural changes. These are very short-term measures, as we've seen from time to time, as government justifies it as being sensitive to market requirements.
Unfortunately not. A loan waiver is not a part of structural change. It is either an appeasement or an atonement of not doing structural changes. So appeasement from the political point of view, but atonement in terms of failing to carry out structural reforms. But I have yet to see, why all the pulses cannot be put on futures, why there are still export bans on tuar, moong, urad, when their prices have gone even below MSP, and we have been importing. But then why don't we allow exports also? The trade policy has to be neutral. So there is an inbuilt consumer bias in the system, and that needs to be corrected to give a fair play and a fair deal to the farmer.
Dr. Chand, what is your sense on the same topic really? Do you think a minimum support price in any sense anymore provides price and production risk management to farmers? It's an age-old, 40-year-old practice that the government really has been following.
Ministry of Agriculture is preparing a new price support scheme, and you might have read in the news that that the state of MP, they have now announced that they will be going for deficiency price payment. I personally believe that the deficiency price payment is the answer or the alternative in place of procurement for implementing price guarantee to the farmer in case of crop where we are not procuring. It will be much less costly. It will not involve all kind of hassles, procuring, storing, wastage, all those kind of things. So center is encouraging states that they should consider this price support kind of schemes, and they should involve themselves in procurement. Then the total cost can be shared between center and states. So I agree with you that even after 40, 50 years, when we started announcing MSP, its effectiveness is there only for rice, wheat and cotton. And in many other crops, in some places, prices do go below MSP, and something need to be done. So some states are actively thinking what to do to those crops, and also our Ministry of Agriculture, they have prepared some kind of schemes, price support scheme, and I think in consultation with the states, that kind of mechanism will be seriously considered in future.
Well, that's good news really coming in from Niti Aayog that the government is looking at an optional or another scheme instead of MSP where they don't have to store, and the cost, of course, would be shared between state and center there. But Dr. Gulati, coming back to you, and I want to just take that point forward. As you said, the stock limits, the export bans, the futures not being allowed for many of these agriculture commodities, but the government has been justifying it from time to time. How would you read into that, and what more do you think needs to be done?
The futures of tur, moong, pulses were banned in 2007, and they are still continuing till 2017. These are not short-term, these are long-term structural bans, and that is anti-farmer. So he works on the basis of last year's price rather than forward prices, future prices. So that's where the cobweb keeps on going on. Stocking limits, at the drop of a hat we put stocking limits, and then we sleep over it for 2 years, 3 years to change the rules of the game. Same thing in export bans. They have been going on for years. So I think there are structural defects, and people who say these are just short-term measures, I don't think they understand how the markets function.
You know, Dr. Gulati, I also want to talk about the schemes that the government has brought about, the ENAM and the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana as well. While, of course, they have been game changers, one in digital sense and others in sense of involvement of farmers. But on ground, how successful do you see these schemes as in sense of implementation?
Both concepts are good. Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, the coverage has increased of the area and of the farmers by about more than 35%. The sum insured has increased by more than 80%. So that's a big success. But in terms of its litmus test, and that is how quickly you can assess the damage and how quickly you can give compensation to the farmers, I would say it's a big failure. And it is taking more than 6 months, 1 year almost. Even the last kharif damages in the areas where floods were there have not been fully paid. There are claims of more than 10,000 crores, only 6,000 crores have been cleared so far. So from that point of view, it has a long, long way to go. And same thing in ENAM. ENAM is a good concept, but the basics have not been done of grading, assaying, storing, delivering, dispute settlement mechanism. And I would say ENAM has not taken off as yet as a national market concept.
Well, those are really revealing numbers coming in. Dr. Gulati, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Chand as well. So that is our agriculture experts telling us that the crop, of course, is expected still on the higher side. No concerns there. But when it comes to the structural changes, when it comes to what needs to be done for the farmers is something that we still have on paper, and that needs to be really implemented on the ground. Even as there are good schemes and we don't need good schemes, it really is about implementation. Well, that's about the crop and, of course, ahead of festivities there. But let's also talk about gold and the preparedness that the industry is making ahead of festivities as we hit the festival weekend this time around. We'll take a very short break. When we come back, we'll exactly be talking about all of that.